Hello and welcome back to the Convergence podcast. The Convergence team is taking the month of August off, and today we have one of our favorite episodes from Season 1. With so many new founders and product teams emerging, especially in this new world of AI, many are hiring developers, often remotely, and running into the same old problems in this new landscape. So, we're bringing you this episode as a reminder of the crucial conversations to have with your development team. In this episode, Ashok and Bailey discuss 9 conversations that product teams often forget to have, which can lead to under- or miscommunications and impact a team's speed and agility as they grow. They'll cover topics such as defining why we're doing this, how we're going to win, and the importance of understanding your customer. We'll be back in September with a new set of episodes on fostering engaged teams who ship delightful products. Enjoy.
Over the years, I've gotten to work with or observe hundreds of product teams. One thing I've been particularly curious about is what is it that teams do to get to market quickly, maintain agility to respond to change easily, and how do you maintain that speed and agility as your customer base grows and you scale your team, your roadmap, and your code base? On this episode, I am joined by Bailey O'Shea, the head of product at Integral. Bailey and I work together to help our clients with building great teams that ship great products. Over the years, we have observed that risks that are brought in that cause downstream impacts to speed, agility, and scaling usually can be attributed back to undercommunication or miscommunication. We've whittled this down to 8 or 9 conversations that are really critical for teams to have, and have oftentimes noticed in the teams that we work with that it's 1 or 2 of those conversations that we forgot to have, and it's a matter of clarifying that communication. So on this episode, we're going to talk about those conversations and some tips on how to best have them across your organization. Subscribe to the podcast to get future episodes as soon as they're published. If you find this helpful, give the podcast a 5-star rating on your podcast app or hit that like button on YouTube. Conversation number 1 that we might have forgotten to have. Why are we doing this? And I think, especially as business people, sometimes we forget to tell the delivery teams or the product teams more context around how the funding got approved maybe, or what it is about our business or our strategy that has driven the priority of this. And that leads to a lot of downstream confusion or missed opportunities, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I also really think that a key motivator to the team is to be able to also visualize the future with you as a leader. So you might have this feeling that you think the user might feel like, or that the market might respond to. And if the team doesn't know that, that means they might be assuming something else. So really tying that to, in a press release style, to what you're doing and how it matters is important.
Yeah, that press release exercise is so great. And despite how maybe prevalent we think it is, when we get out there and talk to some folks who maybe don't see as much social media about how Amazon has run their product teams and stuff, realize that it's something that's new or novel, or folks that maybe have heard of it but never thought they could do it themselves, and spending 10 minutes literally or less to have everyone silently write a press release and comparing notes can short circuit so many assumptions or under communications that you realize only 3-6 months later.
100%. I really love it because you can also observe where everybody's head is at in the room. Some people are really good at creative thinking and they won't limit themselves, and like, what could the future look like, even if they don't know the answer or they're not confident in their own personal answer. So then to your point, short circuits, and you're like, oh, so this person is really only thinking about the near, or they really struggled to connect it with the customer. What conversations can we have as a group after this in order to make sure that we're filling those gaps for our team?
So I think some things that are good reminders are making sure that everyone that's going to be involved knows why it matters to your department and ultimately your company. If you're explaining this to a shareholder or to someone at a Thanksgiving dinner, how might you describe it to them? Also, what it might mean to that department and the careers for the folks and where this might be able to go. You're not making promises, but there's a lot of gap, I think, or a lot of room to play between making promises and also casting a vision in terms of the what could be. What else comes to mind of some reminders of doing a good why from your experience?
I think it really matters for the team to function autonomously and feel like they can experiment. If they know the why and they know the end goal, then they might get creative and they'll really own the problems that they're encountering along the way. And it's a personal motivation to say, oh man, if that's where we want to go in this specific technology or with this impact, reflecting on themselves and what they know or their career goals, they can now raise their hand to their manager and say, hey, I know this is where we want to be 3 years from now. I would love to, learn this thing or take this course in order to get there. So a big personal motivator for career development for individuals on the team. And if everybody on the team is motivated to further themselves and that aligns with the company goal, then everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction, which is great.
For sure.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to think too far out. And also don't feel beholden like you can't change your mind. Like set that expectation with the team and take advantage of both sides of that. So conversation number 1, in case you've forgotten to have it, don't forget to tell your team why. Number 2, how is it that we're going to win? So let's assume the team knows the why here. Now let's get into the how of what this product or this offering is going to have in there that you're going to serve to your customer or other stakeholders there, that if you do well is going to increase your chances of getting to that why, right? So what are some ways that come to mind there for you, Bailey?
Yeah, so this is clearly articulating the business goal. So what will the business do to win in the marketplace? And how does this product serve that business goal or this outcome? So it might be to improve market share. It might be to increase adoption or grow our revenue. But it needs to tie to what is the product doing as one of many inputs in order to get you there. I love winning, so I love tying it to wins.
Awesome. And I love that you love winning too. It's kind of gotten my competitive spirit out. I think the other part of this that maybe the audience is also similarly competitive can come across as intimidating to some of the product team. And along the while, if there are folks that are working closer with the designer on your team or a product person or an engineer that wants to raise their hand and hole poke and say, hey, I'm not sure yet how this feature is going to help us achieve that business outcome, right? Like, how's this product goal integrating into the business goal? And that's a welcome conversation. And it may seem like uncertainty, but really clarifying those assumptions. Maybe you already have some sort of validation or data that you can share, or put it on the board of assumptions of like, hey, that's a leap of faith we're taking. If there's better ideas, like those are also welcome. And kind of marrying that why and the how by inviting input from the team and the folks who are going to be doing it, I think drives a lot of engagement, clarity that leads to a lot of confidence and creativity.
Yeah. I can tell you I love it when any engineer or designer goes, like, how do we know that this is the right thing that's going to move the needle here? And then we have an open conversation as a group. One, I know they're bought into it and they're thinking ahead. Also, to your point, they might have another idea or a suggestion, or better yet, we all come up with an experiment together and we all align on, okay, here's our learning goal and let's check in on it. And then we pivot or keep going.
I think another point of clarity could be, how is this problem solved today? And showing maybe the manual way or the more legacy technology way, and helping them understand the user's journey or the value to the user there. And then showing the vision of the new way will also help maybe sometimes constrain, but oftentimes clarify what it is that we're trying to move away from and what the pain points are, especially if you show like the problem with the new way is X, then it can spur a lot of creativity from your team, from the folks who are closer to the technology, who know how the new system works, who know how it's to integrate, who know the tools available that you may not know about, and you're able to unlock a lot of creativity that way. So this is also like really great for product road mapping, right? Where you can kind of choose the different segments of the market that you want to go after, the different problems that they're experiencing today, and invite your team to sort of, again, validate, hole poke, on the priorities of which of those customer bases are easiest to get in front of or most valuable, which of those problems are most worth solving, compared to like how well can we actually drive a change. And there's a lot of variables and constraints that can come into play, and having this conversation out in the open oftentimes will lead to more clarity without needing a ton of spreadsheets or precision and stuff first. And then you can get into the precision second once you've got that clarity.
Yeah, so. And when you think about an outcomes-driven roadmap, that roadmap ties how we will win in our assumptions with everything we're building in the product back up to ultimately that vision and the business goal. So agreed 100%.
So conversation number 2, you might have forgotten to have. How are we going to win? Moving on to number 3, how will we work as a team? What are the norms, the principles? What are the things that we work on asynchronously? What are the things we need to come together for? This can be, especially for a new team, like a pretty big point of confusion that leads to a lot of chaos. Sometimes we come into an existing team where a few little changes just lead to a lot more harmony and fluidity in how the team works. And I think it's because we kind of forget to sort of talk about how we like to work and how someone else likes to work. And oftentimes it's based off the same principles, but we've got different opinions, and not having this conversation will lead to more friction than, and you're hoping that things get better versus facing it head on. What do you think? Yeah,
so it's never too late to renorm a team or start building team camaraderie. So even if you've been working with people or working with a team, you've been seeing these symptoms of maybe lack of ownership, or there's crickets every time, a question is asked in a meeting, or you really feel like you're having to draw things out of people. Those are good times to stop and make sure that everybody in the room understands their role and how that role relates to everybody else. But also, what is the group's norm around communication? What are our core values as a group? What do we value in each other? Do I understand what the person next to me's goals are as it relates to mine and their role? And how these roles, when you designate them, such as like, a product manager or a tech lead or a team lead, those are designed in order to collaborate with someone else and create some friction and rumble. And that's what you want. So having conversations about how we have conversations together is great.
How often we want to come in and check in, whether it's reviewing architecture, doing a demo of the code. Those are things that I think also kind of maybe go into assumptions where the product team's got something demo ready and the salesperson or whoever's more customer facing, the business person, doesn't necessarily show up for the things because they feel like it's more of a tech thing. And you're trying to bring teams that go fast and change direction quickly. You want everyone coming together. And sometimes it's really a matter of going to that salesperson saying, hey, we noticed you don't join the demos. And they might say, well, I thought that was more of a tech team thing. I thought I was more optional. And having them asking those questions that may seem uncomfortable may just realize that there was a lot of assumptions even within the team. And then, of course, we all know that the more people come in and are able to play with the tools that can advocate for what the customer is likely going to need, the closer we're going to be to really having that moment of delight with the customer. So number 4, the timelines. When, I think there's oftentimes assumptions around timelines. There's friction points around things never seem fast enough. And at the same time, context not shared about what was so critical about a certain date. Was it arbitrary? Was there some kind of external factor that played into that date being chosen? Is there something downstream that's a dependency that we're blocking? So what's your thought on that?
I think that a milestone's purpose is to unify everybody around a goal. But in doing that, you are effectively prioritizing everybody's work and their time and attention around the right problems. So if you're in a conversation and you learn about a date, it's important to really understand, to your point, why that date is chosen, what is behind that date. For larger companies, it could have marketing dollars tied to that, or a big, release at a trade show or something, and that date is really immovable. It could also just be a quarterly target. You want to make sure that you work backward and de-risk that date as much as possible. and have the conversations to do that.
For sure. And I think it also prompts some questions, like going back to the press release one where, okay, we have this product that we want to launch at CES. It's never too late to create the first script of that product launch, just like that press release. And there may be some features or other things that are nice to haves that don't make it to the script, and they can lead to other constraint satisfaction or prioritization in case you're up against a really hard deadline of really separating the signal from the noise in terms of what's the business trying to do. And if it's an announcement versus a launch, that's a good point of clarification where maybe you don't have to have everything for the announcement compared to the launch. Or if you're launching to a specific subsegment of the market, we can again really fine tune who we're catering to in the early days, knowing that we're building this tech in a way that can be really quickly extensible and really easily changeable. So things like, when are we going to market? Other milestones, like if you have a distribution channel that you've made commitments to, like a dealership or a retail group, and there's some event they have, those are all really critical things. And I think it also forces the question of having the folks responsible for, whether it's that the dealer facing person, come in and do a 20-minute talk talking about why it's so important, and starting to build a relationship early too. So they understand what the team's up against, and the team understands what would really help them out with their role. So don't forget to talk about timelines, and don't forget to talk about the context around the timelines. Fostering an engaged product organization and aligning them with the principles around lean, human-centered design, and agile will more than likely lead to successful business outcomes for your organization. But getting started or getting unblocked can be hard. This podcast is brought to you by the player coaches over at Integral. They help ambitious companies like you build amazing product teams and ship products in artificial intelligence, cloud, web, and mobile. Listeners to the podcast can head on over to integral.io/convergence and get a free product success lab. During this session, the Integral team will facilitate a problem-solving exercise that gives you clarity and confidence to solve a product design or engineering problem. That's integral.io/convergence. Now, back to the show. Number 5, what is the technology landscape? What are we up against in terms of legacy technology we have to work with, maybe some partnerships or dependencies that we've introduced into our architecture that we're going to be integrating with? And those conversations can get really jargony and can be a friction point between maybe the tech folks in the room and the business folks in the room. What have you seen?
Yeah, not only a friction point between tech and business, but also a friction point between each different product team. That's where everybody understanding the goal and the date and what's driving that goal is important. So that if you're in an enterprise environment where 6 teams need to collaborate, maybe some abstraction layer needs to be ready. All of those things need to work together. Contracts need to be in place so that the integrations can happen. So you're not blocking each other in service of that goal.
Sometimes we've also come across maybe folks choosing a partner or vendor as part of the overall system without having a conversation with the tech team, right? And I'm thankfully seeing it happen less and less, but knowing early that, hey, we've sort of signed a contract or we're about to sign a contract with someone to do this part is great for the tech team to know in case they're unfamiliar with that technology. So we can go do a spike really early and make sure that everything that's on their like architecture brochure is also reflected in not just their API documentation, but when we integrate into it, we get the responses we're expecting. Or we can have an open conversation of, hey, this tech is, maybe we're customer number 0 and the salesperson has not alluded to that yet. And this is a really critical part of a major launch for us. And this is a risk. And it's not saying that we should or should not do it. It's pointing that out so that the business folks know that, hey, the level of certainty that we may have associated when we agreed to this partnership is not as high as I think it should be based on a team that I trust that I'm going to battle with to get this out. And we can have the right conversations, figure out the right mitigations and stuff early versus finding out 2/3 of the way in that, yeah, let's just plug into this API and it should do everything, only realizing later that that technology that you've integrated isn't fully validated for your specific use case, or unfortunately validated at all for the scale at which you're trying to play. So how are we de-risking that early, right?
Right. Yeah. And the word should relative to technology initiatives scares me a lot. And also something that you keep saying is having a conversation. And so understanding the technology landscape, making sure that the team knows and they are able to express how confident they are in a specific integration that you have to do or how they want to solve the problem. Again, it all comes back to making sure people are having conversations with each other.
Not being afraid of saying, hey, that was a little too technical for me.
Right.
Can you simplify that for me a little bit so I can use it in a worldview that I understand, and we can have a common language to problem solve that. And that can be an intimidating question to ask, where it oftentimes will earn credibility amongst the technology teams. But for whatever reason, we're wired to think that we're going to lose credibility if the tech teams don't think we're tech enough. And they don't need us to be as business people. They need us to know that we've got each other's back and that we can share context fluidly back and forth. So,
yeah, I've never heard an engineer say, oh, this business person or product manager sought to understand too much about the technology, and that's annoying. They're usually complimenting that person. Thank you so much for asking. I would love for you to learn more about this so that you can make better decisions, so that we can solve better problems. There's no fear. There should be no fear in asking for more context when it comes to technology.
Mm-hmm. I wish I could say the same. I think there have been some instances I've seen defensive-ness on both sides, where there's an engineer asking about the business plan around like, hey, why do you need to know about all that? Or if an engineer says, hey, like, are there any customer interviews that I can review? Saying, hey, why do you need to know about customer stuff? I just need you to go build a database there and get this done for me, please. And then the same thing the other way around, where if the business has some kind of uncertainty that they're feeling around the architecture or reliability or something, it may be a likelihood on the engineer's part to feel a little bit defensive of like, hey, why don't you go worry about the customer stuff or the business stuff and let me worry about the tech. And really there's probably good ideas or good risks or at minimum assumptions that both sides have. And having a less defensive version of that conversation can give you an idea of something maybe you need to de-risk, or if it's already de-risked, show them evidence of why they need not worry about that. And it brings people closer together, where whoever it is, that business person or the technologist, doesn't have this nagging worry anymore, and they can really go back and focus on the part of the equation that they bring to the table versus having to worry about the others. And it's, the theme of this is obviously about talking more versus talking less. So that's conversation number 5 you may have forgotten to talk about with your team is, what is the technology landscape and what are the risks associated? So on to number 6. What are some organizational challenges that might hurt us? I think we kind of forget sometimes whether it's stakeholders within your organization that have the ability to say no, if there's multiple regions and you have some kind of joint venture in another region that you've also signed up for, and there's other risks there that show up. Those are things we sometimes forget about, of who needs to approve this before it can go out. Who do we need to partner with? Who are our stakeholders who are maybe not necessarily our customers, but do have a really compelling say in terms of which direction we take, and forgetting to talk about that. And I'm sure I know you and I have been in a few of these as we help our clients. What do you think?
Yeah, I think when you're asking what are the organizational challenges, you want to think of kind of the people. So you've got people that are your biggest cheerleaders that can unblock you. You also have people that might have access to knowledge or data that you need to get hold of. So it's starting those relationships. And when we've asked clients these questions, it's often like a slow pouring of like, oh, this person, oh, wait, but then this person works with this person and that person knows something. And so when we're doing this, we're really drawing like a map of people and how they all relate to each other. And what's really important about influencing others and advocating for your product goals is understanding what everybody else's priorities are and what they're trying to get done in the organization. So if you're talking to sales, you want to give them like a primer because you you understand every day what they're going out to do, and what you're going out to do is a little different. So making sure that you're kind of bridging those relationships is important, and also having a great group of people around you as a sounding board so that you don't go too far down one direction and surprise somebody who has like veto capability.
Mm-hmm. And I think finding out that there's, especially at larger companies maybe, where that veto capability, of course, is like something that's not talked about much. And a lot of assumptions around the boogeyman have been created over years. And I remember when I was working with something related to the FDA approver was just thought about Mr. No, it's going to be so hard. And no one would go talk to this person. And when we talked to them, we realized they are an expert in terms of what the FDA will and will not approve. They're actually a tremendous asset to the team. But you got to give them, no one was giving them the context. No one was sharing the pencil sketches of the designs. They were always the last gatekeeper. And they wish they'd be included earlier, and that they didn't think that was ever part of the process. And this way you can find out, to your point, who are your naysayers, your cheerleaders, your gatekeepers. Find out early, build relationships with them, send them updates. Ask them how often they're willing to sit with us. And a lot of those folks, whether it's legal and compliance, sometimes it's branding for big brands that are very particular about what's okay to go out and what's not okay to go out. Those folks are much happier being consulted early before a lot of investment has gone in, where it's easy to change things, versus being found out at the end, where now you thought it would take 2 weeks to approve something, but for good reason, maybe it's going to now take 2 months, and your launch schedule's all off and other things that you're integrating with. So the other thing I think here is a hesitation that, well, there's going to be too many ideas that come in and too many people I need to keep happy. And I think it's their stakeholders, and sharing that vision with them about what winning looks like gets them aligned too, in terms of why we're doing this in the first place, so they can help row the kayak in the direction of what's going on, or steer the kayak in the direction of what they already know. And put them on an optional when you're doing a demo. Do a recording of the demo that you have every week or every couple of days of showing progress. And those folks, the curious ones, will watch the 4-minute loom that you send them and come back and have questions or showcase like pitfalls that come up early. And again, like the themes here seems to be better conversations lead to better relationship building and getting the best out of the teams around. Anything else that I missed there, you think?
Just want to emphasize kind of all of this in service, to your point, is of the release or the goal or the milestone. And people want to build things together. People don't want to shut stuff down at the end or find out at the last minute. So the sooner that you can even give people the option and name why you're bringing them in and why what they know is valuable to you or why you're interested in their input, the better.
Conversation number 7. This is a meaty one. What are the biggest assumptions that we are making? So I'll just toss the ball to you early here.
Yeah, this is such a fun exercise if you do it collaboratively with other people. So the way that you go about it is you name a goal, and then ask everybody to take stickies or whatever they have in front of them and write out what must be true in order for this goal to happen. What must be true with the technology? What must be true with kind of the product, with the user, with our market? And then you have all of these assumptions, big and small. And then you're able to say, kind of, does anybody else in the room know more about this? And you're able to start sharing data with each other and getting all on the same page together. But you're also able to have a conversation about what is the biggest assumption we're making. Therefore, that translates into risk to our goal. And then have a conversation about what experiments do we want to try, or what is the first, second, third step we need to take in order to make that assumption a bit smaller and less scary.
I think it's also great to have this buy-in, right? When you have engineers in the room writing down business assumptions, and it's something that the business has validated or they have really great insights into, putting that forward early as like, hey, I understand why you think this is a really big assumption, because if we're wrong about this, things can go really sideways. And it's not one dimensional, right? It's not just what's going to have the biggest impact in terms of which the biggest assumptions are. It's a combination of what's going to have the biggest impact and what do we also know the least about that makes it an assumption. And in those cases, that's an opportunity for that business person to share more context about something specific they may have forgotten to talk about. And I find it's a really valuable short circuit because at minimum, that one engineer or maybe that engineer plus a few other folks that didn't ask that question, their minds can be put at ease. More likely, they will also understand the landscape of certainties and uncertainties on the business level, on the product level. And so when I'm architecting my application, I know what stuff I'm going to architect to scale and what stuff I'm going to architect to change based on what I have more data and less data around. And that's stuff we oftentimes forget. And then it's, in my opinion, hot take, one of the real big ways to minimize tech debt in the future is giving everyone a vision of the future and placing that bet together versus, when I architect it otherwise and you don't give me that context, I'm going to use, I'm going to do my best based on what I know using best practices and not necessarily cater it to what we're trying to do here. And then back and forth. I think there have been times before where folks have been burned on something like, we can process payments at this scale. And this company, like one of our customers, has signed up with Stripe, who is a partner of ours. And Stripe really has been able to validate en masse that you can process payments really quickly and seamlessly at scale. And so this is something that the business person would be really stressed out and keeps them up at night, but really didn't have to because this change now in the architecture and this partnership that's come into play is going to make a big difference compared to what it was like before that caused them a lot of headache in the past. And now they can kind of reprioritize what keeps them up at night into things that maybe can make a huge impact on the success of the product that isn't as big of a risk. So it kind of works both ways. And then I think we can maybe come back and do a whole separate episode around experimentation, depending on if there are risks that show up on the business side, the product side, the technology side, the organizational side, and we'll get there. So stay tuned for that because I know for a fact Bailey and I can get into a whole rabbit hole about that. So conversation number 7, you're probably forgetting to have. What are the biggest assumptions we're making? Don't limit it just to the tech stuff. Get those assumptions out across the business, product, and other assumptions there. And that question Bailey asked helps really clarify what an assumption means around what must be true in order for this vision to be achieved so that folks can really ideate around what things their instincts are telling them might go wrong here. Conversation number 8. Who is the product for? And I've gotten the answer of this product's for everybody. It's going to be used by all of our customers everywhere. And I want to think big. And obviously we want our products to be successful massively without any constraints. So tell us, Bailey, why is it important to talk about who it's for?
If a product is great for everybody, then it's likely not great for everybody. And it's great to have it great for at least someone, then it's more likely to be good for many others. So when you're thinking about releasing, you want to find the smallest viable audience. You want to choose one target customer or user to start obsessing over. Understand how they're doing what they're doing today, where this product could fill gaps in that. And you want the team to understand this and be so curious. So activities we often do here is getting into customer journeys, customer jobs to be done, and getting into the what and the why. What is blocking them from doing it? What are their frustration points? And this is a great place where you can leverage your UX and design team as well to take the lead.
And defining a persona here, defining a customer segment may be new to some folks. And there's a ton of frameworks out there in terms of how to do it. I like to start with something way simpler. And it goes down to, okay, let's think about when this is launched. How are we going to market with it? If we're going to go, if it's a B2C one, what channel call it a social media app, are we going to go market this technology or this product. And if you go into any of the ad platforms of the social media platforms, there is a lot of great segmentation filters that it's worth having a conversation and having some fun together as a team of determining who is it that we're targeting that is in this stage of adoption or differentiation in this market, and how are we going to find them? If it's B2B, it's arguably way easier, where there's going to be someone on your sales team that has to go put this in front of a new customer. Is this a whole new sales team you're going to stand up, or are you going to leverage an existing channel that you already have? Now, amongst hypothetically, say you have 8 salespeople, which of those 8 salespeople is likely going to have the most success early? Is it because of an account that they have that you think might want it more than others? Is it because that salesperson maybe is more adept at selling new tools than others? And from there, you can start to have further conversations of, okay, why is it that we think that account is going to like this more than some of our other accounts? And start to come back and see some trends in terms of, okay, who might be number 2? If it's a salesperson, then it's a slightly different conversation, where you want to go sit down and ask them, who would they go and try and sell it to first? And it's coming back to really trying to understand who is more likely to have that problem, and intersecting that with how can we most easily get in front of these folks, and then looking for the folks that you can most easily get in front of that find this to be more of a migraine than a headache is a good place to start. And of course, don't wait till the product is launched to go and share this idea or product with that audience. If you're able to whittle it down to a few folks, whether it's putting up an Instagram ad to that audience and testing some things out, whether it's giving your sales team a couple of questions to ask at the next at their next conversation with their client, that can plant into something that they're able to weave into whatever else they were meeting there with. Those are some really subtle ways that don't take a ton of new work. If you have good relationships with your clients, oftentimes they're just really excited to be part of this innovation cycle and see how your company ideates, validates, and builds product for them. And I would place another $20 bet here that says those relationships will be a lot more long-standing, because the chances of your being disrupted in that account is a lot less, because even if someone shows up with shinier features or slightly lower cost, the customer doesn't have a window into what they're placing a bet on for the next 1 to 3 years with that new audience if they don't have a window into how they innovate and how you're not going to just solve problems for them today, but how they can count on you to solve problems together in the future. I might have gone into a little bit of a tangent there. So bring us back, Bailey. What's something I forgot in terms of the who to talk about?
I would say, just like you want advocates internally and cheerleaders internally, when you think about your customer and your user, you want to think of them as an advocate and a cheerleader for you too, and try to identify some. So somebody trusted that who either is using the platform all the time, who loves it, that can give you that hard feedback or be a sounding board even. And you also don't want to bucket your customers into too big of types, because that can overgeneralize the problems that they're up against. So having and giving the team, and they have access to, and you're reviewing regularly, what is that user journey? What are they trying to accomplish? What are the friction points? What are the new friction points? Is really important to keeping everybody focused on that.
And also don't forget that the who changes. Right. And as you're going from your early adopters and further along that adoption curve, that sharing that with your team in terms of which customers or what kind of tests will come into play in terms of who are the early adopters for this specific problem that we're trying to solve, that are maybe already trying to solve it, and will love to hear that we exist so they can go back to focusing on their number one priorities. And then they're willing to take a less maybe polished version of this, and compared to the folks maybe further down the curve that need a little bit more feature fullness, changing that is also a very okay thing to do, and giving your team that context around who you're going to go sell it to first and then who you're going to go sell it to second also gives you a good window for maybe your design team or product team to go do things like jobs to be done interviews, etc., so that we can get the nuggets from the early adopters that help promote this to folks who are maybe not quite prioritizing it, not so problem aware, and we can bring a little bit more awareness of the problem for them before we pitch them the solution. So conversation number 8 that you might be forgetting to have is, who is it for? Number 9, what is it for? And we've mentioned problem there many times, and that's really being hyper specific to your team and talking about what the problem is that you're solving for that who, and ideally giving them some examples of how the customer might describe it, in addition to your synthesis of how you might describe that problem internally. Not being afraid of talking about how the customer might measure that problem, whether or not they measure it today, and what is that measure going to look like once this problem is solved, and then going from there. So what do you think, Bailey?
Yeah, I'd say a good problem statement unlocks a lot of creativity on a team. And it takes quite a bit of time and a lot of whys and potentially a lot of frustration on the team's part in order to get to a good problem statement. But it's worth the work because it really is a guiding light. And you want to, when you think about something like a product that's automating manual tasks, for example, really understanding what is existing today and how would someone be doing it without this product? And does this product solve that problem enough, bring enough value that someone will learn how to use it, pay for it, and go to it rather than their own kind of duct tape approach?
For sure. And I think prioritizing those problems too is a fun debate to have as part of that, around what might the most value be, which one causes more pain if it's not solved via implications. And it can seem like a waste of time sometimes. But I promise you, if you can time box it to even a 30-minute conversation and say, hey, here's the 5 problems I think we should solve. Let's align on which one's the first one and the second one we need to solve, and so forth. It leads to a lot of healthy debate that may seem wasteful from the standpoint of you came in with the 5 prioritized and you've left with the same 5 priorities, but the context that comes from why they're prioritized 1 through 5, and maybe even a little bit of healthy debate around that, really reinforces for the team what you see there. Or going back to Bailey's favorite one there, shows some assumptions that you may have applied in order to get to that priority, which ultimately we always have to do if we're doing innovation. But being mindful of them, and then perhaps looking to understand a little bit more around those assumptions, maybe creating some experiments, are another outcome that can come out from having this conversation about the what. And so those are the 9 conversations that we find that you are forgetting to have. You're probably having some of them, and these will hopefully serve as a good checklist for you to think about what may be causing some of the symptoms you're seeing. And I feel like there's so much we can talk about these that it makes a lot of sense for us to maybe dig in, Bailey, to each of these. And so stay tuned for some of those conversations in upcoming episodes where we get into these 9 conversations. If you find that one of those are causing you a little bit more uncertainty than others. Any final thoughts there, Bailey?
I'm just getting my shovel ready. Let's go.
Thanks a lot, folks. Thank you for joining me on the Convergence podcast today. Subscribe to the Convergence podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your content. If you're listening and found this helpful, please give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and tell me what you think about what you heard today.